if you own an FC, actually, let's take a step back. Welcome to the channel, or welcome back. Today we are installing some Flyin Miata Frame Rails on a car that's not a Miata, which is my FC over there. Long ago in the RX7 Club, somebody posted that they put the V8 Roadster frame rails on the FC, and I'm gonna say maybe 99% of the FC population has destroyed frame rails. Like, it's just not our faults. The previous owners jacked them up from very thin sheet metal, which is the frame rail, and just smashed them all in. So mines are pretty beat up, and I wanted more rigidity in the car and also more places where I can actually jack up the car, especially when I take it to a shop. They struggle to be able to put the lift points like between the front of the car and then the rear subframe. It's a pain in the ass. Jose from Lucky 7, if you're watching this, this is for you. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna retrofit these Flyin Miata frame rails into the FC. So my logic is, if the V8 Roadster works, these should work. The reason I picked the Flyin Miata, they're nicer looking, they already have cutouts. The only thing that's concerning me at the moment would be the hangers for the exhaust. There's no exhaust on the car, there's actually no motor or transmission, so that saves a lot of issues. So that's the only, I think, obstacle at the moment, but we're gonna mock everything up, make sure it all aligns. We might have to cut out a little bit just to get those exhaust hangers in there, and then drill through the floorboard, and then we should have the frame rails set and in a position where now we can actually put the jack points there. So let's give it a shot. We're no man's territory. All right, so we're gonna start on the passenger side, or the U.S. passenger side, primarily because there's no lines on this side. It's a pretty empty canvas. As you can see, my shit's all bent here, but to the point why I want to put the frame rails. I've already kind of mocked them up, just casually, just messing around, and they do slide right over, which is a very positive note to start with. So first thing that I mentioned is this hanger right here. So this is my concern. So we're gonna take this off real quick. And then we'll mock up the passenger side frame rail, and then go from there. But at least we have an indication of, actually I'll even mark it right here, probably covered anyway, but mock it up and see kind of how it's squaring up, and then if we're happy with how everything's fitting, then we'll drill holes through the floorboard. We already have the carpet kind of loose already. Drill holes through the floorboard. You need a 5/16 drill bit, which we already have right here on the bench. Do maybe 4 holes, 2 in the back, 2 in the front, kind of see how everything's going. Make sure we have an opening for this exhaust hanger, and then if we like what we're seeing, we'll keep going and finish this side up. The trickier one, granted that everything fits up on this side, will be on the driver's side. Depending on your setup, but I'll have to move my ground cable just because I have my battery relocated to the passenger storage bin. And then the fuel lines, I'm going to be replacing those, so I don't really care about moving them out of the way right now. But the important ones are my brake lines, so I'm going to want to move that out of the way. But yeah, it's kind of, like I mentioned, new territory, since you don't really hear about people doing this. Obviously there's some documentation on the RX7 Club, but no one's actually taken the time to record it. So here we are in the mess of it. So hopefully we can help some of the FC homies out. So let's put on the passenger frame rail. All right, here's the mock-up. So first thing that kind of stands out to me, this box part sits a lot taller than the FC frame rail. Like, this is how deep my thumb goes into the quote-unquote box until it touches the OEM one. I'm aligning it based off this main groove and weld on the chassis side on the part of the box. It almost looks like this aligns here, but there's no way that we're gonna get this hole to align here. But my thought is this front part to align with this kind of edge right here. I kind of like how it is. I'm gonna have to pretty much give up on the exhaust hangers. Like, we can see it, one right here. Where's the other one? The other one over there. So it's just, God, I don't know, it's kind of chef's choice, right? What do we want to do? Do we want to kind of try to get this going, or later on down the line kind of have a fabricator kind of just weld another bracket for an exhaust hanger, which, I mean, this is stainless, it'll be night and day for him. So decisions. I think for my approach, I want to align it with this part of the box frame. And by the way, Caleb and I kind of took our time watching some other videos for the frame rails when installed on actual Miatas. This cutout should be pointing forward, so, and the logo's pointing towards the door. So I think I want to align it here. My only concern is when we drill through this hole, it's going to cause us some issues. So, yeah. Tricky, because it wasn't meant for this car. So we are going to put a jack under here and then kind of see where we're at on the floorboard and then send it. All right. So a little update. Caleb and I went back and forth on where to set this up. So, like I said, mind you, this is for a different car, which is for NA and B Miatas. So we have a lot of grooves on the FC on the actual floorboard that cause a lot of gaps, as you can see here. So our approach in terms of where to physically align the bracket, our methodology, and mind you, if you're doing this, you can do it however the hell you want. We got these two holes, split the distance in half, and then there's a hole back here on this piece of sheet metal that's welded for, I guess, the membrane that goes to the transmission brackets or mounting points. So we split this in half, and then we made sure that this hole was aligned with the halfway point. That's just how we decided to set our alignment point, right? And now we'll know when we set it up on the driver's side how much forward this bracket needs to be on that side, so we can be or as close to symmetrical as possible. So we already put down, 6 holes. As I'm drilling each hole, Caleb's on the top side under the carpet, making sure we don't hit any wiring. It's gonna get a little bit, stressful as we get closer to the front. I don't have like an ECU in there anymore right now, so we should be fine. One of the things that I think I will do is buy longer hardware. At this point, we're hammering the bolt down from the floor down, but we're barely protruding with threads, and I don't like that. Like, this one's fine, right? So as you see on these 4 right here, it's not really pushing out too much. And mind you, I mean, I do have the jack supporting it, but dude, this thing is stiff. Like, I can see why you can rest a jack on this with no issues. So we're gonna finish up drilling up this side. We're running out of daylight right now, so that's fine. Either way, like, I'll have to go to the hardware store and buy longer hardware, which is not a big deal. Get these final 6 holes drilled in or drilled out, get the bolts in as best as we can, and then we'll call it a day. But I like it, minus the Miata logo, because it's not a Miata. But not to hate on Miatas, I'll probably like put a sticker there or something. But dude, this thing's pretty sweet. And later on down the line, when we get our exhaust, I'll just have to have something like this fabricated, or shit, they can just tack weld this on and it'll be ready to go. But it's the least of our worries, right? Like, a fabricator will see this and just like night and day difference. So not night and day difference, like super easy job. So frame rail, paper, frame rail, sturdy, paper. You want to know what's worse, guys? 8.6 sheet metal. If you go to Office Depot and buy a stack of paper for your printer, That's thicker than the 8.6 paper, and I'm talking about an individual piece of paper from experience. So if you want to flame me, I don't care. So we're back. We ran out of daylight last weekend, so obviously the week passed, but we have better lighting here so we can show you what we did. We installed the passenger side frame rail. One of the things I wanted to note is these grooves here that are part of the FC floorboard. It doesn't exactly mesh well with the frame rail. There's gaps here. So those gaps essentially end up providing more distance that the hardware provided has to kind of clearance. So I'll actually have to go to the hardware store and buy longer bolts so that we can accommodate, for example, here, you can see it's hardly protruding on the nylon lock nut. And like I said, it's because of these gaps here. At first, they kind of had me a little bit worried. I'm like, I'm not too crazy about the gap, but it seems rather sturdy. One of the things that I did want to note is, for my particular vehicle, the holes for the exhaust hanger, it's kind of back here and here. Essentially what I could do is I could cut this. I'm still debating it. Or I can just have a fabricator just tack weld a bracket here. So once everything's kind of bolted on, I'll kind of think about cutting it or not. I really don't want to cut something that I spent a lot of money on. But you can see like the holes back here and then the other ones here. So essentially we could just get some type of angle grinder or a Dremel, just cut a little piece here, put up the OEM hanger. So if you're doing this and you're running, you know, a stock FC exhaust style, so example, the Racing Beat stuff or RE-Amemiya or any of those aftermarket, you might want to consider cutting this off so you can reuse your hanger and it can hold your pretty much pre-silencer, cat, whatever it is. So one thing to note there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get started on the driver's side. There's a lot more stuff to move around. For example, the brake line, the fuel rails. For my particular setup, we're going to remove those fuel rails anyway. And then we're going to have to figure out what to do about these hangers for the fuel rail and brake line. I've seen some videos on the Miata stuff where they kind of bend that bracket and utilize this little stud right here. We're gonna wing it. Let's see what happens. But yeah, we're gonna switch sides. I'm gonna take off the brackets here and mock up our driver's side frame rail. My approach to lining up the passenger and the driver's side is I'm gonna use a long level from the back end here. And then I'm gonna make sure everything zeroes out so that we know the spacing is the same on both the passenger side and the driver's side. One thing to note about these braces, Flyin Miata just had this X brace that kind of comes under the body. I'm not gonna buy it just yet. I have a friend who has a Miata with that X brace. So essentially I'm gonna measure the distance from where they mount to. So I believe it's these welded on nuts. I'm gonna see what his measurement is and then compare it to mine. And if they're within the ballpark, then I might just ask him if I can borrow it to see if it fits. But if I were a betting man, I'm gonna say it doesn't. I feel like the FC is a lot wider than the Miata, just by looking at the car. But you never know, because this frame rail sits right over it. So yeah, let's get started on the driver's side. There you go. So I think that's the only other thing that's gonna get in our way. I'm actually gonna take this off because for my car, I won't be using the Oh well, that is what it is. It's part of the car now. For my car, I'm not going to be using this just because we are going to be using a CD09 transmission, or CDOA. So my
Speedo cable.
Speedo cable. So the Speedo cable is not going to be necessary. We're going to be running a Haltech dash and then ECU, obviously. So haven't decided how I want to measure the speed. I'm sure the CD09 or A has a speed sensor based off the transmission, or you know, I could do what I'm doing with the 8.6. I actually have one of Haltech's GPS speed sensors where you can just put on the dash and connect it to the ECU or the cluster, and it just based off GPS tells you how fast you're going. So yeah, we're not going to use this because we're not using a Turbo 2 trans. But yeah, now let's finesse our way with this bad boy, and I'm going to have to move things around because I'm going to use the jack right now to kind of support the frame rail while I level it with the passenger side. Ugh. So we got the frame rails on. This is the driver's side, but we need to fix something. So let's put perfect. There you go. Sensational. Hey guys. Shout out to Scotty Bands. What? I finished. Can I at least post a photo? Damn. Damn. Watch me cramp. Okay, so we're done for the most part. As you can see, the frame rail is sitting on jacks, jack stands. Really nice. It sits right in the groove, which is so much better than trying to get it to sit either on the subframe or the rear subframe. So really nice. Obviously, these fuel lines and brake lines are kind of dangling. We don't have any provisions to mount the OEM brackets, so we'll have to figure something out. For my particular setup, I'm going to be switching out these fuel lines anyway, so it was eventually going to happen anyway. Caleb and I did find out that in the hardware kit there are some long bolts and there are some short bolts. Granted, it's specific for an NA NB Miata. So we made everything work. We kind of had to hammer down the floorboard, but I'm still going to go back and change out the hardware. Later on down the line, we're not going to really record this, but I'm going to take off the frame rails again, and then I'm going to put some like type of seam sealant just to protect the floorboard from rusting. Overall, it came out pretty good. I was a little concerned that we had gaps, but structurally everything looks sound. Obviously, we were gambling. We were going to put the weight of the car on the frame rails, and well, if the frame rail collapsed, it was already fucked up to begin with, so I wasn't really losing much. And plus, if I saw while I was deloading the jack that it was really crushing everything, I would have pulled out. So we're good anyway. Yeah, Caleb and I started debating the hangers for the exhaust, and thinking we could probably just cut the slots open a little bit, but I kind of have to sleep and think about that one. Obviously we're going to change out the hardware, but overall it worked. Shout out to the guy who originally posted it on the RX7 Club. I'm not sure if RX7 Club's dead anyway, but if it is, RIP. If it's not, check it out. So these are the Flyin Miata ones. They work. Granted, if you're going to do this, be aware it's not for your car. It's not for an FC, but it will work. You'll need some different hardware just because you run out of thread with even the longest bolts on some sections just because of the groove of the floorboard. Any other thing that I want to mention? Have a buddy on the top side, keeping the carpet up, especially on the passenger side. You don't want to drill through some of the wiring because then you're going to be really, really screwed. Let's see, anything else? I will probably do a little short later on down the line if I remember to, but I want to check if these X-frame locations are the same between the FC and the NA&B Miata. So I'm gonna have my buddy Aaron hopefully take off his X-brace or measure the distance between this threaded nut and that threaded nut. If it lines up, I'm gonna mock it up, and that'd be more reinforcement for the chassis, which would be really cool. But given the nature of the FC, I feel like we might come across some type of clearance issues with either the transmission, especially when we get the CDO-A/9, whatever you want to call it, and also the exhaust we get, whatever exhaust we end up going with. So that's just something to keep in mind. And if anybody's wondering about this right here, it's a Fish Racing transmission mount for the FC. It's for the CDO-A9 transmission. There are some type of kind of questions about if it lines up correctly with the S5 manual trans. So far, just threading it by hand, it looks like it does, but we won't know until we actually get the transmission later on down the line and mock everything up. So if you're wondering what that is, Fish Racing, they make a lot of the CDO9 kits for K-Series motors, 2J motors, LS motors, and of course the rotary. So that's something we'll end up doing down the line once we get the transmission and cutting it up. But you know, I got a deal on this and I had to just kind of jump on it, and I don't want it just sitting in a box. I threw it on the car. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Frame rails are on. Car is sitting on jack stands on the frame rails. We're gonna come back and, like I said, seam sealant to keep the floorboard from rusting. But then again, a lot of shit is rusted on this already. And then, yeah, put the carpet back on like how it's supposed to be, and throw some bucket seats back in this car because it hasn't had bucket seats since we donated them to the 8.6, but I got some new bucket seats for this bad boy. So thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, comment. If you like the video, like it, subscribe. But yeah, peace out.